What if everything you thought you knew about pleasure anatomy and your own body was incomplete? What if the key to deeper connection, confidence, and understanding has been there all along, just misunderstood or never explained clearly? Today, we're breaking the silence around something most people are curious about but rarely understand fully: your own anatomy. This isn't about myths, awkward conversations, or misinformation. It's about clarity, confidence, and knowledge that empowers both men and women. When you understand how your body actually works, everything changes: your awareness, your communication, and your connection. So let's get real, get informed, and remove the confusion around the G spot and P spot. Because the more you know, the more control you have over your own experience, and that's where real confidence begins. The G spot, often discussed yet widely misunderstood, is a sensitive area located inside the female body along the front wall of the vagina, typically a few centimeters in. It is not a separate organ but part of a complex internal structure connected to the clitoris, which extends far beyond what is externally visible. This area contains a concentration of nerve endings and tissue that can respond differently from person to person. For some, stimulation may create heightened sensitivity or a deeper form of pleasure, while for others, the sensation may be subtle or even uncomfortable. Understanding this variation is essential because there is no single correct experience. The G spot is also influenced by factors like arousal, comfort, and emotional state, meaning it may become more responsive over time rather than instantly. Scientific perspectives suggest it is closely linked to the urethral sponge, a tissue that surrounds the urethra and swells during arousal. This helps explain why stimulation in this region can feel distinct from other areas. Awareness of anatomy plays a key role in removing confusion and unrealistic expectations, allowing individuals to approach the topic with curiosity rather than pressure. The P spot, commonly known as the prostate, is a small gland located inside the male body just below the bladder and in front of the rectum. About the size of a walnut, it plays an important role in the reproductive system by producing a fluid that nourishes and transports sperm. What many people don't realize is that this gland is also highly sensitive due to the dense network of nerve endings surrounding it. Because of its position, it is typically accessed internally through the rectum, which is why it is often less openly discussed or understood. Sensations associated with this area can feel very different from external stimulation, sometimes described as deeper or more full-bodied, though experiences vary widely from person to person. For some, awareness of this part of the body may be completely new, shaped by cultural silence or misconceptions rather than factual understanding. Physiologically, the prostate responds to pressure and stimulation, especially when the body is relaxed and there is a sense of comfort. Muscle tension, hesitation, or lack of knowledge can affect how sensations are perceived, which is why understanding the anatomy itself becomes more important than assumptions or expectations. The nervous system plays a key role here, as stimulation can send signals through the pelvic region, creating responses that feel distinct from other forms of sensation. The prostate is also connected to surrounding muscles and tissues that engage during arousal, adding another layer to how the body reacts. Misunderstandings often come from a lack of education rather than reality, leading to confusion about its function and sensitivity. Recognizing the prostate as a natural part of male anatomy helps shift the conversation from stigma to awareness, making it easier to approach the topic with clarity and accurate information. Misconceptions around the G spot and P spot often come from cultural silence, misinformation, or oversimplified explanations that don't reflect how the human body actually works. One of the most common myths is that these areas guarantee a specific outcome or experience, when in reality, human anatomy is far more complex and individualized. Not every person will feel the same level of sensitivity, and for some, these areas may not produce noticeable sensations at all. Another widespread belief is that the G spot is a distinct, standalone structure, when scientific understanding suggests it is part of a broader internal network connected to the clitoris and surrounding tissues. This misunderstanding can create unrealistic expectations and confusion when experiences don't match what people have heard. There is also a myth that awareness or exploration of these areas is unnatural or unnecessary, often influenced by social taboos rather than biological facts. In truth, both the G spot and P spot are normal aspects of human anatomy, and learning about them is simply part of understanding the body more completely. For men, the P spot is sometimes surrounded by stigma or assumptions that discourage open discussion, even though it is a medically recognized gland with clear physiological functions. These misconceptions can prevent people from learning accurate information and create unnecessary hesitation or discomfort. Another common false idea is that these areas are always easy to locate and respond instantly, which overlooks the role of factors like comfort, trust, mental state, and overall awareness. The body does not operate like a switch, and responses can vary depending on many internal and external influences. There is also confusion between scientific evidence and anecdotal claims, with exaggerated descriptions often presented as universal truths. This can lead to pressure or disappointment when real experiences don't align with those claims, Understanding the difference between myths and facts requires shifting focus from expectations to education. Reliable knowledge highlights that anatomy is interconnected, responses are personal, and there is no single correct way the body should react. By removing exaggerated claims and focusing on biological reality, it becomes easier to approach the topic with a clear, informed perspective instead of assumptions shaped by incomplete or misleading information. Communication plays a central role in understanding human anatomy and creating clarity around topics that are often surrounded by silence or misunderstanding. When it comes to sensitive areas like the G-spot and P-spot, the ability to openly express thoughts, boundaries, and curiosity becomes more important than any technical explanation. Without communication, people are left relying on assumptions, media portrayals, or incomplete information, which can lead to confusion and unrealistic expectations. Clear and respectful dialogue allows individuals to replace guesswork with understanding, making it easier to navigate personal experiences without pressure or uncertainty. One of the biggest barriers to effective communication in this area is discomfort. Many people grow up without proper education about their own bodies, which creates hesitation when discussing topics related to anatomy. This hesitation can lead to avoidance, where questions remain unasked and misunderstandings continue to grow. When communication is present, it creates a space where individuals feel more confident asking questions, sharing experiences, and gaining accurate knowledge. This is not limited to conversations with others, but also includes internal awareness, being able to recognize and understand one's own physical responses without judgment. Another important aspect is the role of language. The words people use to describe anatomy can influence how comfortable or uncomfortable the conversation feels. Using clear, respectful, and accurate terminology helps remove stigma and normalizes the discussion. It shifts the focus from secrecy to education, making it easier to engage with the topic in a meaningful way. When language is vague or filled with slang and misinformation, it often reinforces confusion instead of resolving it. Trust is also closely connected to communication. In any context where individuals are learning about sensitive aspects of the body, a sense of safety and respect is essential. Without trust, communication becomes limited or filtered, which prevents honest exchange of information. When trust is present, it allows for more open conversations, where individuals feel heard and understood rather than judged. This creates an environment where learning becomes more natural and less intimidating. Communication also helps manage expectations by aligning understanding with reality. Instead of relying on exaggerated claims or one-size-fits-all ideas, individuals can develop a more accurate perspective based on real knowledge and personal awareness. This reduces pressure and allows for a more grounded approach to learning about anatomy. It emphasizes that experiences can differ and that there is no universal standard that everyone must meet. In addition, communication encourages continuous learning. As understanding evolves, conversations can adapt and expand, allowing individuals to refine their knowledge over time. This ongoing process helps replace outdated beliefs with updated information, ensuring that understanding remains accurate and relevant. It also reinforces the idea that learning about the body is not a one-time event, but a continuous journey shaped by curiosity, awareness, and openness to new information. Anatomy and sensitivity are deeply connected, but they are not identical concepts, and understanding the difference is essential for building accurate awareness of the human body. Anatomy refers to the physical structure of the body, organs, tissues, nerves, and systems, while sensitivity refers to how those structures respond to stimulation, pressure, or touch. In the case of areas like the G-spot and P-spot, both structure and sensitivity work together, but the experience is never uniform from one person to another. The same anatomical region can produce completely different sensations depending on individual biology, nervous system response, emotional state, and even levels of relaxation or stress. From a physiological perspective, sensitivity is largely determined by nerve density and how signals are processed by the nervous system. Areas with a higher concentration of nerve endings tend to respond more strongly to stimulation, but that response is not always predictable. The brain plays a major role in interpreting these signals, meaning that sensation is not just a physical reaction but also a neurological experience. This is why two people with similar anatomy can report completely different levels of sensitivity in the same region. The brain essentially acts as a control center, filtering and interpreting sensory input based on context, comfort, and emotional readiness. The G-spot, for example, is not an isolated structure, but part of an interconnected system involving internal tissues and surrounding nerve pathways. Sensitivity can vary significantly depending on physiological factors such as arousal, blood flow, and muscle relaxation. When the body is tense or uncomfortable, sensitivity may be reduced, while a relaxed state can allow the nervous system to respond more openly. This variability is a normal part of human biology rather than an inconsistency or problem. Similarly, the P-spot is influenced by its anatomical location near dense nerve networks in the pelvic region. Sensitivity is shaped by both physical structure and neurological wiring, which means the experience is layered rather than simple. The prostate itself is surrounded by muscles and tissues that can amplify or modify sensations depending on how the body responds. This makes sensitivity a dynamic process rather than a fixed property of one specific point in the body. It is also important to understand that sensitivity can change over time. Factors such as age, hormonal balance, health conditions, and lifestyle can all influence how responsive certain areas feel. Even emotional states like anxiety or confidence can affect how the nervous system processes sensation. This highlights the fact that anatomy alone does not determine experience. It is always the interaction between body and brain. Another key aspect is perception. What one person interprets as strong sensation, another might perceive as mild or unnoticeable. This difference is not a flaw in the body, but a reflection of how subjective sensory processing truly is. Cultural influences and personal expectations can also shape how sensitivity is experienced, sometimes enhancing awareness and sometimes limiting it. Understanding anatomy and sensitivity together helps remove the idea that there is a single correct response the body should have. Instead, it reveals a complex system where biology, neurology, and psychology all interact. This perspective encourages a more realistic and informed view of the human body, where variation is expected and individuality is normal rather than exceptional. Confidence through knowledge is not about knowing everything. It is about understanding your body in a way that removes confusion, reduces fear, and replaces assumptions with clarity. When people lack accurate information about anatomy, they often rely on myths, incomplete explanations, or silence. That gap in understanding can create insecurity, hesitation, and unnecessary pressure. But when knowledge becomes clear and grounded in facts, it changes the way a person relates to their own body and to the subject entirely. Confidence does not come from exaggeration or fantasy, it comes from awareness that is accurate, calm, and free from misinformation. Understanding the G-spot and P-spot from a biological perspective is part of this process. When people learn that these are not mysterious or separate, hidden secrets, but actual parts of the body with defined structures, the topic becomes less intimidating. The G-spot is understood in relation to internal tissues and nerve networks, while the P-spot is recognized as a functional gland within the male reproductive system. This shift from mystery to biology helps remove emotional discomfort and replaces it with a sense of normal human anatomy. Once something is understood scientifically, it becomes easier to talk about without embarrassment or confusion. Knowledge also builds confidence by reducing unrealistic expectations. Many misunderstandings come from oversimplified ideas that suggest every body reacts the same way, or that certain areas always produce a specific result. When people believe these fixed ideas and then experience something different, they may feel confused or uncertain about themselves. However, accurate understanding shows that human anatomy is highly individual. Responses vary based on nerve sensitivity, psychological state, comfort level, and overall awareness. Recognizing this variability helps people stop comparing themselves to generalized standards and instead focus on their own experience without judgment. Another important part of confidence through knowledge is emotional stability. When someone understands how their body works, they are less likely to feel anxious or uncertain about normal variations in sensation. Instead of questioning whether something is right or wrong, they begin to understand that the body naturally responds in different ways depending on context. This reduces internal stress and creates a more relaxed mindset, which in itself can influence how the body feels and responds. Knowledge in this sense directly impacts emotional comfort. Education also encourages responsibility in how people approach sensitive topics. Instead of relying on hearsay or misleading information, informed understanding promotes respect for the body and its boundaries. This includes recognizing that comfort, consent, and communication are essential parts of any discussion involving anatomy. When people are educated, they are more likely to approach the subject with maturity rather than curiosity driven by confusion or misinformation. Confidence also grows when individuals realize that learning about their body is a normal and healthy process. There is no need for shame in seeking understanding. In fact, awareness of anatomy is a fundamental part of health education. When this mindset is adopted, the topic becomes less about taboo and more about personal knowledge. This shift allows individuals to engage with the subject calmly and rationally, without emotional resistance or embarrassment. Over time, knowledge builds a foundation of self-assurance. It allows people to separate facts from myths, reduce internal doubt, and develop a more grounded relationship with their own body. Instead of feeling uncertain about what they do not understand, they gain clarity that supports confidence in thought and communication. This kind of confidence is not loud or superficial. It is steady, informed, and rooted in understanding.